Welcome, viewers, from International Council for Industrial Security and Safety Management. You are heartily welcome for this discussion, which we are having with Captain Praveen Dahiya. Captain Praveen Dahiya is a proud gunner from Regiment of Artillery and has honorably served in Siachen Glacier, CI Ops, and high altitude areas of J&K. He was also the ADC to GOC 12 Corps. After completing his short service commission in March 2007, he worked with India Bulls, Videocon, MTS Microsoft, JSPL, and Amazon. With most of these organizations, he led the investigations and/or risk divisions. He is currently managing InQuest Advisory Private Limited, which is a leading fraud and security risk management boutique firm serving over 60 MNC and domestic clients within and outside India. His diverse experience across industries and domains have given him an in-depth understanding of various career possibilities and how future could be shaping up for security professionals in times to come. You are welcome, Captain Dahiya, and let us share with our viewers that today we are going to discuss how background screening is going to help the security professionals. The prospective employers need to know more and more about the employment seekers, and they put a lot of stakes once hired. There might be case of bad hiring, which becomes not only an irritant to the management but also big legal liabilities. Similarly, many banks realize the risk of poor background screening while extending big loans after the Houdini vanishing act performed by certain king of good times. The discussion is organized by International Council for Industrial Security and Safety Management, and we request you to subscribe our channel for getting advance intimation of next forthcoming discussion on another important subject. So, Captain Dahiya, once again, you are heartily welcome, and it was my indeed pleasure and privilege to make your introduction. I have known you for a very long time, and since you have worked in many companies which pay a lot of focus and importance on background screening, why background screening is enabling tool for security professionals, and not only security professionals, for HR executives also. So let's hear from you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful introduction, first of all. And the topic that you picked up today is extremely interesting, and I always get intrigued by this subject. I'll quote an example to begin with. The incident happened in Ladakh way back in, I think, 2003. And I was supposed to organize some transport for my regiment. And I called up the ASC unit which was there. And from my side, I said, the officer who was there on the other side, I said, good morning, sir. This is Captain Dahiya here. The other side person said, good morning, Dahiya. This is also Captain Dahiya here. And we had a loud laugh. And later on, he told me that there were at least three Praveen Dahiyas in that entire region. Why I'm quoting this example here is, sir, that and we don't realize one thing in today's times is that identity theft is something which is one of the most common issues and the biggest frauds. So when people say so and so fraud happened or so and so issue happened, the in most of the times you'll realize that the background to that fraud or the background to that problem is an identity theft. And this is a subject which unfortunately has been restricted to standard background check scenarios which are there around the education verification, the employment checks, and certain other checks which are there. But in true sense of risk management, if you ask me, it's a vast subject. uh, Background screening is not just about the screening of certain fixed credentials of an individual. It is about understanding the true background of a person, because that is the way you are trying to mitigate the insider threat. Now, as HR professionals who, as on date, if we see more than 90% of the organizations, they have given this particular vertical to the HR department. But ideally, if you see, in my take, it's a strong business case for the security professionals to come forward and probably claim or maybe ask for this particular responsibility, or even if HR professionals are going to do it, but they need to have certain investigative skills in that to take care of this particular piece. Now, background screening, at the face of it, people say, okay, background screening is what background screening of an individual or an employee is what it is all about. But background screening, along with the predictive analysis, use of AI today, the behavioral analytics which can be done, psychometric tests which are done today, it's much more than what it used to be earlier days. The risk has evolved over a period of time. We know that there are multiple ways how you deal with that. Background screening has always been kept on the last pedestal that, and I don't think it has ever been seen as a serious measure to mitigate the organizational risks which are there to the reputation, to the professional damages which can happen to the organization. The recent example, if you see, of Hyundai company, which is just I think one of the most recent issues. One might not see it as a subject or as a issue which is directly related to background checks, but it is the individual who's sitting there who is managing the social media platform or managing the social media posts of a particular organization. It could be a distributor, it could be large organizations, small organizations, but one tweet has literally destroyed their entire reputation, which they have built over a period of number of years, number of decades, so to say. So, background screening should not be seen in that with that myopic view of only limited to education verifications or the last employment that person has done or certain other factors which are there. As I'm saying that in our organization, we are trying to work on multiple other parameters of predictive analysis, trying to understand the human behavior more from a future perspective, because background screening is about finding out the historical data of an individual. Now, if you technically or logically look at it, anyone who had certain things in mind to commit a fraud or to commit a crime will, of course, make a deliberate effort to remove the tracks. So at that point, you need investigative skills, or you need to know how and where to dig deeper to find out the real background of that individual. And that's where we say that I think background check at the face of it looks simple, but it is quite complex, quite intricate, and that's where I think sky's the limit in this area, sir. So I would say that there's a lot that we can talk. There are a lot of examples that I have to share, and it's a wonderful subject to begin with.
Uh, for our viewers, let's discuss how you go about doing background screening. Uh, they are, I believe, all legitimate ways and means to do background screening. And what are the sources you use for background screening?
So, when it comes to conducting background checks, there are certain questions around it, and generally all the problem solving ways of the way I do it is that I look at the five W's and H, which is what, why, whom, where, when, and how. So, when you understand what is a background check, like I was sharing in brief, that background check isn't just about understanding some basic parameters of an individual. It is much more than that. So once you have listed out as per the requirement, that is clear. Now, in the whom part, that whom are you going to check? Another mistake which most of the organizations or a lot of people these days commit is that there are standard checks for all levels of employees. Whereas from a executive assistant or a PA to a driver or a security guard of a company, the risk exposure is different. The kind of information that person is dealing with is different. So you need to understand that what checks and for whom. Now, then comes the question of when to conduct those checks or where to execute these checks. Again, I'll share a small example here. It again happened with one of my previous organizations. I'll not be able to share the name, but yes. So this incident was quite interesting, where a lady comes for an interview in a specific department, and this example also fits very well in today's scenario. Recently, somebody was sharing some article about the IT employees doing dual employment and working parallelly while they're engaged in with the company's work because of work from home scenario. Now, in this incident, what had happened is that this lady comes for an interview for the department, and it was the HR department only. She comes for the interview. She gives the interview as the standard process is that she comes at the main gate, makes an entry, comes inside, gives her interview, and she was offered the position for which she had come. After a few days, the offer was rolled out to her, and as the standard was that she said, okay, I have to serve for 2 months of notice period in my previous organization, and she was allowed to do that. 2 months down the line, the lady comes and joins the organization. Now, uh, after some time, the manager realized that probably there is some miss, some gaps there, because he was not getting the desired results what he probably had seen during the interview, or he had seen in the CV that these are the basic skills that this person must be possessing. But unfortunately, the manager was not able to get those that kind of an output from this individual, and things kept on moving, and she kept on learning, and probably she was able to match up with the requirements. It just happened by fluke that she stopped coming to the office after a few days, and the department or the manager started getting worried that what has happened, and he sent a few people to the lady's house. And when they went there, they were shocked to see that the lady was perfectly fine. The news that had come to the office was that she has met with an accident, and the office people had gone with a bouquet that, okay, let's as a courtesy sake, let's go and meet her at least and wish her get well soon. What they see is that the lady is perfectly fine, and she opens the door. Now, what they see is that now she was in a fix, and that's where she had to spill the beans that they were actually twin sisters. So I very often I quote this example because I don't think there's any organization in today's times who has got these measures in place that when the candidates are coming for interview at that point in time, the person who's coming for interview, I remember in good old days or even now for that matter, a lot of places, the proxy exam sitters are there who come and sit in the exam in the remoter areas and all that. So the same thing was there. She came for the interview. She cracked the interview for her sister, and they are twin sisters. So there's no way that they could catch this particular fraud. So understanding now here, the subject says that security professionals. Now, the interesting piece here is that how security professionals could have played a great role here without being an active part of the background screening process. The entry which was made at the main gate, of course, the lady who had come. Now, in general, for the past almost 15 to 20 years, what I've been doing is that in all those security registers, I've been making an entry, and my name, I rarely write my name as Captain Praveen Dahiya. I always write it as Captain Kach. And that's the only way is to create some humor and tell the person responsible, because I generally know that maybe nobody is looking at those registers. So there is a control of the security teams that we could have put in place by either taking signatures or by taking a thumbprint, or the ideal situation would have been, which recommended to my organization also, was to have a biometric machine. That whenever the candidates are coming for the interviews, and if a candidate is selected, at that very time, the biometric thumb impression is taken from that person. And later on, of course, that has to match with the person who comes and joins after 2 months of time. So, understanding what checks are to be conducted, who all are to be covered in those checks, and varying from position to position. Now, a driver of a company will have a, like you said, driver or a guard or a PA or a accounts or an accounts executive or a marketing executive. They all have different kind of risk exposures to the organization, and accordingly, their background checks also must be different. A driver might not be for him. An education check may not be that relevant, but yes, for him, a physical fitness check is something which must be mandatory. His eyesight test is something which is mandatory. Likewise, his license check comes and plays a very crucial role, which again may not be, obviously will not be relevant in an account executive's case. So this understanding of the risk exposure, accordingly, the checks which must be done for these professionals is something that needs to be identified. And then comes that how these checks are to be conducted. So before we come on how, we need to understand the what, when, where, whom, and why. So, in the how part, that how these checks are conducted, there are various ways. There are databases which we refer to. There are field executives who go on ground and verify the credentials of as per the requirement. For the document verifications, we have various ways, the various portals, various databases, international, domestic databases that we refer to. For the education checks, there are various. All the universities have this mechanism in place where we reach out to them, and they do verify or tell us that the certificates are authentic, genuine, or these are fake. So these are the various ways how the background checks are conducted, sir. More than the background check, in fact, there are multiple other pieces which are linked with background checks, which is the due diligence and the detailed investigation. So coming back to the same point that how security professionals and why security professionals or HR professionals with investigative skill set is a must for this particular piece of the responsibility, is that, as I said in the beginning, that anyone who has an intention to commit a fraud, intention to commit a crime, will hide the tracks. Now, how do you identify that? And if at all you have been able to identify, then what next actions to be taken? And in which all cases you need to conduct a thorough due diligence so that you are able to get to the real background of that individual. Or there could be cases where a normal background check, which was started as a normal background check, but needs a full-fledged investigation. If the person has already been brought on board, maybe an investigation is warranted in that case. So these are various ways or various questions, I would say, that in background check, which security professionals or HR professionals must ask within an organization, and probably start a dialogue around it, that not to look at background screening services as mere background screening services and mere a compliance meeting activity. It is much more than that. A lot of huge amount of money that can be saved for the organizations. We know the amount of money that goes into investigations if at all a fraud happens, which could be a cyber fraud, which could be any other issue, reputational damages as Hyundai is facing right now, or any other brand that they faced in the past. So in when I was talking about due diligence, now due diligence is again a vast piece where, while background
Uh,
check deals with,
Praveen,
sorry,
please go. Can you hear me,
yes, sir.
Praveen?
I can
Uh,
hear you now, sir. I can.
my point was, when you go about doing background screening, you have also mentioned about due diligence, and it is ultimately leading to a position that when you have large staff and extended workforce, that is, workforce which is not on regular role but keeps coming frequently in large number. So for them, background screening may not be possible, but the regular staff which needs to go through background screening, are there any templates fixed, or it is purely need based or hunch of HR or security professionals to think about background screening? And when it is background screening, I know that security professionals who are on roll for security management may not be able to do full justice to entire exercise of background screening. So what do you suggest? Should security professionals be given exposure and training to do elementary background screening themselves? That is one situation where our security professionals in corporates get involved in HR recruitment and routine security exercise. That is one thing. Second thing is that when it is large scale recruitment, why not engage a background screening specialized service provider? So there are two options available. So what do you recommend as a security professional as well as a specialized service provider? Thinking there is business kind of approach and other is professional approach. What would you recommend yourself?
Sir, I think a blend of both is what works well for most of the organizations, because there are certain areas of background check which an in-house security professional may not be able to address. So, access to various databases for an organization, it might not be viable enough, or from a cost perspective, may not be a viable option to take access to these databases. Likewise, a lot of the field inquiries might, let's say, that needs to be conducted, address verifications and all that. So overall, from a cost standpoint, again, an organization might decide to sublet that entire activity to professional organizations who are purely into the BGV operations. What can be done internally by the security professionals is having these a broader understanding around what checks and how these checks are being conducted by the third party which has been onboarded. and keeping a quality check on the findings of these agencies. At the same time, at security level, I think profiling is something which plays a very crucial role. And in many organizations, we have seen, I've personally seen that the security guards, even to the extent of security guards, they are so well trained that the way they do profiling of each and every visitor, each and every person who's coming in, going out, that they are able to understand certain aspects there and then. So that may not be directly related to the specific background screening subject as we are talking about, but more from understanding the insider threat standpoint, that yes, that's the way security professionals can contribute. But yes, it cannot be either of them. It has to be a mix of both, where the security professionals are able to understand the importance, understand the significance, how background screening services can contribute or help them in mitigating the various risks which the organization get exposed to, and the findings which these organizations are submitting to his or her organization, how can they add value to it by having a quality check, and what all kind of quality checks can be put in place. All of that comes from the security professionals who are there.
When a security executive have doubt about some employee's integrity, or the conduct is somehow suspicious, should he go straight away to the management, or do you recommend certain tools for him to apply and do elementary background search himself, with which he goes to the management to suggest that now is the time to go for the detailed background screening to be done by thorough professional agencies? What are the indicators at that time for security professionals?
So here I would want to quote something, sir, that when we say background screening or the background checks, these will differ from due diligence or even investigation for that matter. The incident that you are sharing, or the example that you are sharing, is more towards the investigative side of it, or even due diligence side of it, where if any employee or anyone from the management has a suspicion on an employee of committing any kind of fraud. It could be connivance with the third party vendors, suspected acceptance of kickbacks from them, or data thefts. So any such issues which might be there. Now, what needs to be understood here is that what is the basis of that suspicion. So we always ask that, that is the first thing, that what is the basis of your suspicion, whether there was any tip which was given to you, or something that you have been observing yourself, in what form, digital, video, audio, or any other evidence that you might have, which you believe is not substantial enough for you to really take it up to the management. So I think taking it up directly to the management may or may not be the right step at that point in time, depending upon how serious the allegations are, and secondly, how strong the basis is. So, as a security professional or vigilance professional who are there, as a first step, in order to ascertain the veracity of those allegations, some of the steps they can take is that try and find out more information around that subject. So, again, it's a vast area. One needs to look at what allegations, if the allegations are severe, if that is something to do with the organization's reputation, if it is to do with the large financial impacts, then I think it needs immediate attention of the management. But if it is something which is more on an individual level, let's say acceptance of kickbacks, or any other such activity which is being suspected by the employee, then maybe a bit of due diligence can be done by the security professional at his or her end. And the templates or tools that one can use are various. There are social media intelligence gathering, open source intelligence gathering, human intelligence gathering. But again, it depends on that security professional's area of expertise, his area of responsibilities within the organization. If he or she is trained enough on these tools and knows how to gather or collate information around through these tools, then they may find some more preliminary information around it, that if that individual is closer to the vendors, and let's say, taking the example that the suspicion is more around taking kickbacks from these third party vendors, then all of that information can be collated in the beginning before it is brought to the management's notice.
Due diligence was the term you referred
So,
early in your introductory remark. What all is involved in due diligence and how it is linked to background screening? I think first is due diligence, and then in that process, it may come out that background screening is needed, or you do background screening for the due diligence. How you take both the subjects together?
So there's a fundamental difference in both, sir. Background screening and due diligence. Background screening is something which is done in a manner, in a fashion. Like I said, there are standard checks which are around background screening, which are like the education background check of an individual, the employment checks wherever the person has worked in the past, verifying that yes, he or she has worked in that organization earlier, and certain other like the criminal check, police verification, address verification, and these are the checks which are done as a standard check. When it comes to due diligence and where all due diligence is common, due diligence is more common with the senior management, because sometimes the management or the organization feels that somebody who is being hired at a level of a CEO or a CTO or a CIO or any other such senior position that is there, they might find it either odd in that situation, that how do they go about gathering this information, or they might be they because there is a general understanding that sometimes at that level you may not get the desired information. And also the background check for certain levels is done with certain objectives in mind. So due diligence is generally discrete in nature, wherein you try to extract information about that leader's, let's say, leadership style. So we call it SMDD, which is senior management due diligence, which is kind of discrete in nature, where you try to understand more about that leader, that what is his leadership style. And many a times in India, there is a trend which most of the HR professionals can relate to, is soft dismissal. Now, what is soft dismissal is that somebody who has committed a crime in the organization, might have committed a fraud, it might be a sexual harassment case or any other case, because of multiple reasons, the organization might have gone for a soft dismissal. That is, on records, everything is fine, but that does not remove the does not let the fact go away that the person had committed certain some fraud. But many a times, because of the fear of a reputation loss or other factors, they say, okay, we'll go for soft dismissal. And that's where the next organization is more worried that for this leader to come and join our organization, and what was the actual reason for him to leave the earlier few organizations. And that's where they would want to understand more about him. And that's where due diligence comes and plays a crucial role, and which otherwise cannot really be brought out in a standard BGV check. Likewise, due diligence is also done for third party vendors, which is a very again a very standard practice for many multinational companies today, that all the third parties who are onboarded by the organization, they do a due diligence on them in order to understand that if that organization has been blacklisted, or they might have gone through, there might be certain litigations against them, there might be regulatory or statutory issues associated with those vendors, and the employing organization will then be aware in advance before they are brought on board, and they might take a decision accordingly. So VDD is one, SMDD is another one, individual due diligence. So it, and in investigations also, many times due diligences are utilized in many ways.
A very fine line is needed to be drawn when someone is involved in background screening, and it is about privacy issue. And privacy issue becomes big, hue and cry, and Pegasus and whatnot. There would be a scene created as if you are doing espionage. I believe there is fine difference between espionage and background screening. So for viewers, how you differentiate that? We don't do those trench coat hat and magnifying glass in hand, that type of espionage exercise. But background screening is purely ethical and legitimate exercise. So, kindly, share with us how to differentiate these two activities.
So this goes without saying, sir, has to be ethical. There is no second doubt on that. But yes, how do we make sure that it is ethical? Is that all the information which is gathered in a due diligence or even in background checks is information which is available in the public domains, and no information is gathered in a manner which goes against the law, which puts the organization which has employed the BGV agency on board, or the person who's being against on whom the information is being gathered. None any one of them are put in a difficult situation. So any information, as I said, which is available in public domain, all the databases which are referred to are either maintained by the government or even privately maintained databases. These are all ethical in nature, where which we refer to. The field investigations, which or the field information which is gathered, is again ethical in nature, that whatever inquiries are being run are done in a fashion without impersonation, without impersonating anyone, or without using certain mechanisms which might be read or taken as against the law. So you're right, and there's a lot that has to come in the times in the future, in terms of the privacy law, in terms of how the privacy is defined. But having said all of that, the organization which is employing these individuals, ideally, I mean, in our organization, we have this product called Check World, and the whole idea when we came up with Check World and what we have been trying to do is the self verification piece. And what we are trying to say in that is, or what we are trying to do in self verification, is that it is not the responsibility of the organization to conduct a background check on a candidate or an individual. It is the individual's responsibility to come up with a clean record, or all the details about his or her background, and provide it to the organization. And that's where we are coming up with this concept of self verification, where they need to conduct their verification on their own on all the parameters, and we certify that and hand it over to the organization.
So, all what goes for background screening is legitimate, and management is well within the right to ask the information, which may include passport detail, Aadhaar card, credit card, bank accounts, ration card, driving license. With all these information, employee submits to management, nothing is left. Nothing is left, and there is no privacy. But these are kind of practices, and surely HR guys, they know those who seek employment will very happily and hurriedly provide all these informations. But later on, when you realize that after getting all these source of input, you realize that someone is not clean. It was bad hiring. So I believe that with background screening, there are no recommendations to be attached. It is only pure facts gathered and put up to management. But are there any tools available for background screening to be done? Any software or any platform created which helps background screening to be done accurately and faster?
So before I come on the tools question, sir, the question that you have raised is very is extremely interesting again. Now, again, going back to the basics of background screening. Background screening by an organization is initiated on what information? The information which is submitted by the person who is being recruited. And at what point of time does that person submits that or shares that information with the HR? when the person joins on a particular day, or let's say on the first day of joining, the individual has already been informed in advance that you need to come on your first day with all these list of documents, and the person comes and submits those documents for further verification. And there are certain forms that individual needs to fill up on that particular day, and the background check activity kickstarts at that point in time. What is interesting to note here is that there is a large piece of activity that has happened prior to this, which is when the individual had shared his CV. The individual was interviewed. Probably multiple rounds happened. 3, 4, 5, 10 rounds of interviews happened. Basis that CV, which was submitted by the individual directly to the HR, or the HR got it through some HR consultant. You will see in many cases there would be chances that the HR professionals or whosoever is responsible for that activity may not be really comparing the information which was submitted in the CV at the time of when the person was to be interviewed, and whatever has been submitted by the individual on the first day when they fill up those forms and submits those documents to the HR. So that's where the misses are. And when you look at background screening process as a whole, you will realize that it is less to do with the real background checks, but more to do with the controls, more to do with these checks and balances that needs to be put in an organization in order to make the background screening process overall extremely effective. And as far as the tools are concerned, there are various tools which are available today in order to make the checks. In order to have the opportune checks, I would say that speed is one thing where most of the HR teams are always struggling with the time factor, that they need the results as fast as possible because they have the pressure or targets to onboard X number of people by a limited time frame or within a limited time frame. Uh, while this is a battle between the HR professionals and the background screening agency, because for us to get the desired or the quality results, we need more time. If there is an education check which is happening, so the university will take its own time to revert. Though there are certain databases which have been created of the university pass outs. There are certain universities which have tied up to these databases, and if not real time, then near real time information is being fetched by these databases, and you can get information from there. But having said so, not all the parameters of background screening are automated. So you have this interdependency on the human factor on multiple channels. Like for education check, you need to reach out to the universities or these databases, central databases. For criminal checks, you have to have the litigation check, or you have to have the police verification, where police have their own ways. Certain states have online checks, but many states are still relying on the physical checks. So that's where it's a mix and match of all these ways and means how the background screening is being done today. There is no one tool. Yes, there are single tools in terms of initiating the check and getting your report from there. But when it comes to conducting those checks in the background, these are the ways it's being done.
A very medieval kind of approach prevails in PSUs. Certain private sector agencies also follow what government mandates. And that was, very aggressively advocated by government agencies, especially IB. And they recommend that whenever anyone is working in prohibited areas, sensitive installations, so there should be character verification. You heard that term, character
Yes.
verification. And character verification was never timely done. I had long extended argument with the successive director IVs wherever I interacted when I was working in PSU. And I used to tell them that your historical approach to get the character verification done by police department is limited to only submitting an application along with a fees. It is never done. In fact, in my entire career of more than 38 years, I never got a single character verification done, whereas I applied in thousands. And even if it is done, my case used to be that it has got time and place limitation. That on so and so date, a police station puts stamp and seal and says that in his jurisdiction, that
Exactly.
individual has not done any crime. Even today, all police stations are not connected to central police crime record bureau. So centrally, these informations are not available, and when these information are available, these are only originating from a particular police station where someone claims to be residing for a particular period. Either he is permanent resident or he has stayed there for last 5 years. So he might not have committed anything wrong in that police station jurisdiction, whereas next police station jurisdiction, Rojanam is full of his activities on daily basis. So that is the limitation. So I believe, and for that reason only, that character verification has got a very stupid historical, medieval approach. And for real security professional, when they want to see whether someone is clean and clear of crime record, then background screening is the answer. But in India, I believe that it is still uh, a developing field. I am sure that you are not very happy with the kind of business you are getting. You would like more and more people to approach you to get this police verification done through professional agencies. But how you would tell security professionals, not sounding as your professional business pitch, but as a security professional advice to other security professionals, that something needs to be done, best is to be done professional like manner. So what is your recommendation?
So I think the point that you picked up, sir, is so relevant. And trust me, in most of our conversation with the clients, we come up and we share this incident, we share this particular piece. And when we started Check World, as I was mentioning, the idea of Check World was to democratize the background checks, wherein we wanted and we have in fact there is an application of Check World as well as the web platform which is there, and the objective was that all the individuals or RWAs which are there, they can they have the access to this Check World portal and they can initiate these checks. Now in most of our conversations, the biggest challenge which used to be is that they would say that okay, we are getting the police verification done. Am I audible, sir? I think your screen is. Sorry, sir. I think I was not audible.
There was some issue, connectivity issue. So continue what you were saying.
Yeah, so the Check World initiative that we had taken, and we reached out to a number of RWAs. We started with Gurgaon, and with most of the RWAs, the challenge used to be this only. They would say, "Oh no, we are getting police verification done," and our core aim or the initial the sheer aim at that point in time was to educate these RWAs or all these people that what actual character verification, as you said, or the so-called PCC police clearance certificate is all about, that it is restricted to a particular jurisdiction, and there are various ways and means how you might be missing out on the true background of that individual. And coming back to this point, that what security professionals within the organizations can do to deal with the situation professionally, the best way is, as I said in the beginning, that by having these controls in place within their organization. And there are a lot of controls that can be put in place. There are a lot of ways that the character verification, though, or the PCC is one part, but there are multiple other background checks or background check elements which can be incorporated in the overall package of a background screening service. So, as a security professional, what they need to understand is that, first of all, what are the risks that a particular role is exposing the organization to. Like I said in the beginning, from a guard, the kind of risk which the organization is exposed to is different than somebody who's joining as an EA or in the marketing department or sales department. And once you understand that these are the risks, once you've listed out the typical activity of how the risk management or the risk assessment is done, that you identify the risks, you list them out, and then how do you mitigate these, is that uh, multiple elements of background screening which can be introduced in this. So how the police verification or the character certificate thing can be duplicated with the litigation check, which may not be currently a part of the standard package. But litigation check is something which can help them in understanding if there are any past cases against that individual, could be civil in nature, could be criminal, and all of those can be identified. Uh, in certain cases, depending upon the level of risk, the bandwidth can be increased, maybe even to more, like I said, from a background screening to a due diligence. And and their recommendation plays a big role. If the organization is hiring, let's say, EA to chairman, the kind of information this particular person is going to deal with is going to be highly sensitive in nature. So it demands that a higher level of background check or a due diligence is conducted on that role. And that's where a security professional can come and play a role with his recommendations, strong recommendations on how the background check, what all elements should form a part of that particular check for them.
Security professionals, when they want to understand nuances of background screening, of course, during this discussion, I'm sure that our viewers know fairly well about what is background screening and why it is needed, and also what are the ingredients of background screening. But I believe that they themselves, as security professional, need to enhance their knowledge and skill. For that, they need to undergo certain training. What are the trainings suggested to them?
Uh, in terms of training, sir, a lot of certifications are there which can be done. But yes, I would say I think security professionals must have the open source intelligence gathering training, the social media intelligence gathering training, and knowledge of the databases which are there. So there are a lot of training programs which are available as on date. I mean, I'll not name any specific ones, but a lot of them are available. If they Google, I'm sure they'll come across a number of these certification or training programs, which will help them in understanding how to go about conducting effective open source intelligence gathering, how to go about conducting effective social media intelligence gathering, then having a list of all the domestic and global databases handy with them, which should help them in understanding that these are the databases that are available. And if at any given point of time they need to have some information about an individual against a particular area, they can go about and get that information. In addition to that, understanding on how all these checks are being conducted, for example, how the education check is being conducted, in the employment records, that when the background screening agencies are going and conducting the employment screening, the employment record check, they need to understand that if we as background screening agencies are reaching out to the previous organizations, then which are the ways or what gaps can play some role. So I think more than the standard training, understanding the nuances of each and every check, what goes into conducting those checks, and what all opportunities are lying there for even the agencies to commit an error, and how can security professionals go and probably have their own controls in place that they can check, they can add quality, add value to these to the final findings by the agencies. And understanding the risk, the specific role based risk, is something that I'm sure the ISO 31000, that gives them good understanding around the risk management. So these are the broader trainings or understanding that they must have.
Thank you very much, Praveen. In fact, the way it is discussed, many doubts which I had myself are clarified. That's why I have not taken any questions here, because the questions were those, echoing my own self doubts. Having clarified those doubts myself, these are also taking care of the remarks and questions which came through the discussion. We have already crossed 52 minutes, and how time flies. Thank you very much for being very clear and concise, and very, very uh, kind of professional manner in which you have taken the clarification and expanded the subject. Viewers are, I'm sure, more knowledgeable now when they were before you started talking. For viewers, we are going to have discussion on very important subject again, which is lined up, and next discussion will take place on 15th February with aviation security expert on the subject of flying high with immaculate aviation security. Aviation security has got, a lot of vulnerabilities, a lot of risk, a lot of challenges, and security issues are so important that any small slip, any negligence will cause very heavily. And let's look forward to such discussion. In the meantime, remain happy, remain secure, and with those kind words from you, uh, Praveen, a closing remark and maybe certain message to our viewers.
So thank you so much, first of all, for picking up this subject. It's actually been very close to my heart. When we invented when we started Check World, the whole objective was to democratize background checks, as I said. And the current understanding of whether security professionals, HR professionals, or even any layman is very limited, and they underestimate the power of background screening or background checks. So I think in closing remarks, I'll only say that let's dig deeper. Let's find out more about the background checks and how they can utilize the background checks in safeguarding their families, their personal belongings, even, and the professional part of it, their businesses, reputation, and financial impact, and all that.
Thank you, Praveen, and thanks to you also, dear members, dear viewers. As you know that we have started security leadership discussion. This was one of that security leadership discussion which brings to you series of discussion on various important aspects of industrial security management, and we have many more lined up. At least till June, you will see almost every week discussion taking place. Kindly subscribe to our channel. You will get advance notification. Make your comments there. Encourage other security professionals to join more and more in such discussion, because these are our efforts, sincere efforts to professionalize the professionals. This is our catchword, and we really believe that through discussion, even when we are not reading much, at least through discussion, we'll get to know much more, and this will add value to our profession, make us more knowledgeable, more information oriented.